The jungle was thick with silence, broken only by the crack of branches and the pounding of boots. A small group of travelers had set out together, believing their unity was their strength. But when fear struck, their courage collapsed. In the heart of the so-called kill zone, where every wrong step could mean capture or worse, they abandoned the one person they thought was slowing them down, a young woman who had once trusted them with her life. In their panic, they left her behind, convinced she would never find her way out alive. But what they didn't know was that she was far stronger than any of them had imagined. Alone, with no guide and no one to rely on, she moved through the darkness with a determination born not of anger, but of survival. Every shadow seemed to whisper danger. Every sound carried the weight of threat. Still, she pressed on, refusing to surrender to fear. Hours turned into a blur, and just when the world felt as though it was closing in, she stumbled across something hidden, something the others had missed in their frantic escape. It was a clue, a forgotten scrap of direction that held the power to lead them all out. As dawn broke, the group who had once left her behind sat trembling, certain they would never find the path out. Regret weighed heavy, but their pride kept them from speaking it aloud. And then, through the rising mist, they saw her silhouette emerge from the trees. She was not broken, not defeated. In her hand, she carried the very thing they needed most, an escape map that could save every last one of them. But the question lingered in the air, heavier than the danger surrounding them. After being abandoned in her darkest hour, would she be willing to lead them to safety, or let them face the fate they had chosen for her? The group froze when they saw her step into the clearing, their eyes locked on the torn piece of map in her hand, the only thing that promised a way out of the kill zone. For a long moment, no one spoke. Guilt flickered across their faces, but it was quickly masked by the same fear that had driven them to abandon her in the first place. They were desperate now, but desperation had a way of making people unpredictable. She remembered the moment they left her behind, how their leader whispered that she was slowing them down, how the others avoided her eyes as they pushed forward, leaving her in the shadows. That betrayal burned in her chest even now, and yet, against every odd, she had survived. She had followed faint tracks, avoided hidden traps, and trusted her instincts when everything else seemed hopeless. The map wasn't just luck. It was proof that she had found what they could not, because she had refused to give up. But as she stood there, holding the key to their survival, she wondered what they truly deserved. The kill zone was no ordinary place. Stories about it had circulated long before they entered, stories of people disappearing without a trace, of shifting paths that seemed designed to confuse. Some believed it was cursed land, others that it was carefully guarded by forces no one could name. Whatever the truth was, it had already taken its toll on this group. Fear had turned friends into strangers, loyalty into suspicion. Now they looked at her with a mixture of hope and unease. They needed her, but they knew she had every reason to walk away. The question was not just whether she would lead them out, but whether they could even trust one another long enough to survive what still waited ahead. Her footsteps were steady as she moved closer, but inside her mind, questions tangled like vines. These were the people she had once trusted, the ones she had shared food with, laughed with, and believed would stand by her side. Yet when the shadows of the kill zone pressed in, they'd chosen fear over loyalty. Their decision to abandon her had revealed something dark, not about the place they were trapped in, but about themselves. The map she carried wasn't just a set of directions. It was drawn in fragments, marked with symbols that didn't match any chart they had studied before. Whoever had left it behind must have known the secrets of the land, and perhaps the dangers still waiting on the path ahead. She had spent hours tracing its patterns by the dim light of the moon, trying to make sense of the strange lines and hidden markers. It promised an escape, yes, but it also hinted at obstacles that could test them more than they were prepared for. Around her, the group shifted uneasily. Their leader, the same one who had called her a burden, tried to meet her eyes, but quickly looked away. Another member clenched his hands as if torn between apology and pride. The silence between them was louder than words, filled with the weight of regret and suspicion. Deep down, she knew survival in the kill zone was not just about finding a path out. It was about whether they could face the truth of who they had become under pressure. The air seemed to grow heavier with every passing moment, the forest itself, watching, waiting. She held the map tightly, aware that her next choice could decide not only their escape, but whether they deserved it at all. The air was thick as they began to move again, this time with her at the front. No one dared to argue. The map seemed to hum with importance, every symbol carrying a weight they couldn't yet understand. Each step into the kill zone felt heavier, as though the ground itself was testing them. The trees grew closer together, their branches twisting above like a net, trapping the group beneath a ceiling of shadows. Tension clung to them like a second skin. Every sound, the snap of a twig, the rustle of leaves made someone flinch. They whispered among themselves, but their voices carried doubt more than trust. Some wondered aloud if she was truly leading them towards safety or if she was guiding them deeper into danger as revenge. She could feel their eyes on her back, sharp and suspicious, but she didn't slow down. The map's path was clear to her, and that clarity kept her moving forward. Then the signs began to appear. A fallen marker stone with strange carvings, a clearing where the earth was scarred as though by fire, and finally, a narrow passage between two jagged rocks. According to the map, this was the way out, or the last trap. Their breaths grew shallow as they hesitated before stepping through. The leader clenched his jaw, his pride cracking under the weight of fear, while the others shifted nervously, their unity unraveling by the second. She stood at the entrance, gripping the fragile map, the memory of their betrayal burning as fresh as the night they left her behind. The group gathered close, torn between desperation and suspicion, knowing this crossing would decide everything. The silence was unbearable, every heartbeat echoing like thunder. And just as they prepared to take the first step forward, the air shifted, carrying a sound none of them expected. Something moving ahead in the darkness, waiting. The sound grew louder, echoing through the narrow passage like a warning. At first, it was impossible to tell what it was: footsteps, the shifting of rocks, or something else. The group froze. Fear tightened their throats. They had expected the kill zone to test them, but not this way. Every story they'd ever heard about people disappearing here suddenly felt real, pressing down on them with invisible weight. She raised her hand for silence, her eyes scanning the darkness ahead. The map had shown a safe crossing, but it had not mentioned this. For a moment, doubt crept in. Had she misread the symbols, or was the map itself a trick? Behind her, she felt the group's growing unease turning into distrust. A whisper cut the silence, sharp and accusing. "She's leading us into a trap." Others didn't say it out loud, but their eyes said enough. Suspicion hung in the air like a storm about to break. Then out of the shadows came movement, fast, deliberate, and far too close. The ground beneath their feet trembled, scattering loose stones. Whatever was ahead wasn't just waiting, it was circling, pushing them toward the narrow passage with purpose. The kill zone wasn't empty, it was alive, and it wanted to keep them inside. The group's fear turned into panic, voices clashing as they argued over whether to follow her or turn back. Every second wasted brought the sound closer, the unseen presence pressing in from all sides. She stood firm, clutching the map, her heart pounding but her resolve unshaken. The path was dangerous, but it was the only way through. What none of them realized yet was the map held one more secret, a hidden clue that would change everything they thought they knew about the kill zone. and why they had been brought here in the first place. The passage shook as the cell closed in, forcing them to make a choice. Panic surged through the group, but she stepped forward first, holding the map high, as if it were a shield. The others, torn between fear of her and fear of what hunted them, followed reluctantly. The narrow rocks scraped their arms as they squeezed through, every second haunted by the pounding noise that grew closer and closer. Then, just as they emerged into an open clearing, the truth struck. The presence that had stalked them wasn't an unseen monster. It was a trap of the land itself, designed to herd them here. The symbols on the map suddenly aligned with the stones around them, revealing what she had suspected all along. The kill zone wasn't meant to destroy blindly. It was meant to test. The final marker pointed not to an escape path,